morning. Anything before the jury comes?
Your Honor, we were informed this morning by the state that there are potentially 7 reply witnesses. And before we get into that, we've looked at the cases on reply, including State versus Prather, which is a 2020 case. And I want the court and I want the state to understand, and we think many of these witnesses have already testified. They're these are very few new witnesses already testified in this case, and it's been called reply to new evidence, something. But we have a right under the case, State Watson, which is a 2003 case, 353 SC 620, 579 SC 2nd, 148, to serve rebuttal. So
you said they right to?
It's discretionary with the court, but submit to the court that under the criteria set out in this case, you determine that if they believe in matters, that we have a right to respond to those. Now, we're told that Dr. Riemer, their pathologist, is going to testify. If you remember correctly, Your Honor, and I looked at YouTube at this point of it, Dr. Riemer has previously testified that she did not believe this to be a contact wound to the head. I submit that we're going to try to repeat that testimony or elaborate on that testimony, and that was the only issue that our pathologist raised, which he believed it was a contact wound. And why? She's already testified why it wasn't a contact wound to the head, and why. So, are we going to have to get our pathologist back here to counter hers if she raises some new issue, or perhaps, Your Honor, I need 7 reply witnesses. It was 2, now it's 4, now it's 7. This is a process that's got to stop at some point. We're going to be here next week. There are 2 expert witnesses that have already testified in this case. Now, one of them I would concede, Ken Kinsey. There's an appropriate reply witness based on Mr. Palmbeck's testimony yesterday. But the pathologist, again, to testify it wasn't a contact wound to the head, she's already testified to that. And some of these other witnesses, law department members, to testify, they remember the night they already correct in their previous testimony. So this has got to end at some point. We spent 2 weeks on financial, 2.5 weeks of the 6 weeks on financial matters. In my opinion, it would have been done in a day. That's just my opinion. But I'd ask the court, as we make objections, to consider and maybe even proffer what they're going to put up before we get in front of the jury, so that you can make an evaluation before we start down that road for a half-a-day witness. May not have anything.
The findings of Dr. Riemer, and she's here to explain why those conclusions are incorrect, including his reliance on particular factors, and why ultimately his conclusions are wrong. I think that's directly in the scope of reply testimony. My focus on reply is not to just repeat testimony, but on specific issues during the defense case that specific witnesses have something that contradicts or put that in the appropriate context, and that is our focus. And we intend to move very expeditiously through that. But ultimately, her as it relates to the pathologist, it relates specifically to the conclusions offered by defense experts. It is not just a mere repetition of testimony already received, but comment on factors identified by those defense experts and why those are incorrect.
Let's take Kinsey, for instance. There was testimony yesterday that our expert believes there were 2 shooters. Obviously, something that he was not asked. Obviously, something that's a new matter. Obviously, proper for reply. But there are minute details, perhaps, that would be these witnesses would be questioned about. And simply because there might be a hook doesn't mean they get to go into everything. I mean, this is, again, this was an estimate, 3-week trial. We're now in week 6. This will go into week 7. It seems to me the state's position is let no dead horse go unbeaten. This has got to stop. Thank you.
The defense, of course, when we had the meeting with Judge Price, at the time, we all agreed with that estimate. It was not just the state. I realize this is going long and to move expeditiously, but the state has the right and the opportunity to do appropriate rebuttal evidence to a defense case, and that will be the focus of the testimony here today.
They have is the same right I have. It's the right to allow. I just want to make sure they have the right to do things.
State has the right to apply to certain issues presented by the defense. Issue credibility, it has to be finely tailored, such that we don't create a situation where a court will be compelled to rebuttal, which is almost unheard of. You mentioned State v. Prather. That was my trial. I was a trial judge in that case in Lexington County, a murder case where I allowed reply testimony by a lead agent. The Court of Appeals, in a 2-1 decision, reversed the conviction. Then the Supreme Court reversed the Court of Appeals and reinstated the conviction that was obtained before me. So it can be a controversial and contentious issue. It almost always is, because there has to be a limit to the back and forth. Surprised to hear the number of witnesses that the state said intends to offer. I do not know. The case is so complex. We had so much testimony. I cannot sit here and rule as to what would be appropriate and what not. I just have to deal with it on an issue by issue, objection by objection basis. And with that, so bring. Sure, thank you. Good morning. Day 26. 26. You have heard the defense's case. Now the state gets an opportunity to reply. And you may call your first witness.
May I please call Your Honor, the state calls Ronnie Crosby.
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you give today will be the of you guys. Thank you. If you'll have a seat on the stand. If you would state your name for the record and spell your last name, please.
Ronnie Crosby, Crosby.
Good morning, Mr. Crosby.
Good morning.
Just want to go over a few things very quickly in reply to some of the defense case. And the first thing I want to ask you is, you had previously testified about your close relationship with Paul, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
All right. And over the years, you were held to ride around the property with Paul, yours or his?
More on my property, but some on one or more occasions at Moselle as well.
What thing would you carry when you rode around the property?
This is Paul.
Yes, specific response to the testimony and the statements as well. I can be specific. I don't want to do a speaking response. But I can ask another question, maybe put it in focus, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right. Heard prior testimony. Don't go around looking for hogs because they're nocturnal from the defendant, did you not? Are you familiar that was said?
Action, Your Honor, if it's based on what he heard or seen, I mean, is this a comment made to him? We're going to go into to hunt hog or not. I mean, this is not proper reply.
My first question is, have you gone
Road Paul was would have been looking more property.
All right. And what, if anything, would you carry when y'all were looking for hogs?
Riding with Paul on his property, not Moselle.
We have, as a general rule, you would always take a rifle with you, be it day or night. You never know, because they are, as I spoke earlier in my you always want to be prepared to do them when you have a rifle and with you.
Objection, Your Honor. His next.
Objection overruled.
All right. Plenty of experience in killing hogs on your property?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Harpootli. I'm pretty much an expert about killing.
All right. And you had the opportunity to go hunting with Paul?
Objection. I apologize. Witness.
And you've had the opportunity to go hunting with Paul, or have him hunt on your property?
Yes, I've been. He's been on my property more times. I didn't go with him every time he was on my property, but that's the general rule, that you would have a rifle of some sort. Paul, as told over in that 300 blackout, I used some other framed shoot hogs.
A 223.
Well, 223 or a 6.5 Creedmoor, which is on a R10 frame.
Would if to carry for hogs?
Sometimes it's better for you tonight, but I've killed hogs in the riding. It's just something. There's some uses in the low country across the state right now and across the south that yeah. Observations had a relationship with probably was saving father.
Occasions ago, original story as to what he did on the night of the murders?
On more than one occasion, we discussed his story as I testified to, I don't know how many weeks ago that was, but it was a while.
And what, if anything, did the defendant tell you about during checked Maggie before calling 911?
I understand what he told me was that he checked them before he called 911.
Was he clear on that point to you?
It was clear.
First time you heard the defendant's this story,
like a lot of people, when I heard that Kelly was taking this stand, what testimony, and it was the first time that I'd ever heard that.
I can tell you that he thought it had anything to do with
Consistent. Told me anyone on the boat had anything to do with it. I don't recall any other conversation about the case, but he I think that anybody on the boat would have that it was a I don't remember ever discussing him and because anything beyond was, you know, I don't know, it would have been speculation, but I didn't have a conversation with him about it.
Did you ever have a conversation about variable money because of his?
You're referring to, yeah, I did. In, it would have been June of 2000. And Alec were very
Yes, sir. The defendant cross-examination was specifically asked about that particular transaction and that we're about to discuss, and Mr. testimony in response to what the defendant said about money, and in as much as he tried to imply that, well, Eric kind of owed me money anyway, as a justification for him stealing money from one of his best friends.
He did not ask him about a conversation he had with Mr. Crosby about that money. That isn't proper lie. This is going off on another tangent.
Overrule the objection.
Can you tell us about that conversation, please, Mr. Crosby?
yes. In my years wrong, I don't know exactly what you're asking, and I can go back and look at documents, but it's in one of these exhibits that the materials that Messenger. I believe in June of 2018, Barrett, who was a good friend of closer, I think they were, in my perception, close friends. But I had become friends with him and had done a couple of real estate transactions with him. I received a call from his son-in-law. Barrett was in the Mayo Clinic with stage 4 colon cancer.
It was overruled.
I did the fact that he was in Mayo Clinic, suffering, being treated for stage 4 cancer, and I received a call as to whether I could help Barrett financially.
Your Honor, hearsay, a call.
Objection's overruled.
because his wife did not have enough money to stay, some waterfront lots.
Objection, Your Honor. Here's all this material else.
I this first. I already had a lot that he would buy. Wanted to be for Jacksonville. He was receiving cancer treatment, and I had a conversation with,
About the conversation.
I just told him this is bad. I did that year, and he acknowledged it, and he said that it was good what I was doing. He did it and bad help.
And, you obviously remember this law firm and you have records as all that did that take place around the time that the defendant was stealing some of Barrett's money?
Somewhere I believe but I believe it was a $70-something thousand insurance check that came to the firm on behalf of Mr. Boulware that didn't go through the firm. It was just Alec took it that same month that we had that conversation. And then later there was some more money taken after he died.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 575. States 575. See if you recognize that.
Is that one of the
Initial interview with David on June 8th, as he manufactured his decision to lie about such a crucial fact, was because he thought that David Williams was the interviewing him.
Williams, he said, that's the record. That guy.
It's admitted over objection.
Can I have the element, please? All right. That's who you recognize as David Williams?
Yes, I didn't know him. I got to know him through this investigation, and I do believe he was the agent that was involved in the case with Mr. Chief Greg Alexander that was referenced. That's not David Williams. Case Alec, I believe the only case I tried to jury with Alec was actually here in this courtroom.
Did you observe him being able to get emotional during that closing argument?
Yes, as a couple months ago when we talked and you asked me what kind of lawyer Alec was, and I told you he was a good lawyer, and one of the things that I think I explained to you was that he was a theatrical type, and he could very emotional doing closing in front of a jury.
Questions?
I hate to go here, but let's talk about Hogg I know nothing about. Okay.
Might want to go there.
I think I learned how to hog hunt. But I guess my first question is this: did you ride Moselle with Al? Ride around Moselle with Al?
I know I wasn't there, so I believe I rode. I don't ever remember doing much riding with like Brazil, but I know I dove hunted there, and sure I rode in a Ranger or some type of ATV with Elliot. But that was specific.
Right around dove hunting.
You would.
Did you take a shot?
Well, they don't usually come in a dove when you're shooting dove. So, but you just wouldn't, Mr. Hartpoot, typically. I mean,
But it takes time. Get a slug shot or you use bird shot.
you would shoot bird shot.
Okay. So if a hawk maybe you're on your way to the dove field. You don't. The dove field's not right next to the house, is it?
Yes, it's right within a few hundred yards.
Bordered by the.
This one, but yeah.
Okay. And where do the hogs live during the day, primarily?
Well, they can live in a swamp, they can live in a bay. You know, it could be anywhere, but largely in the swamp.
The swamp. So a hog could have come out of that swamp.
Yes.
You were armed.
I said, if a hog came in a dove field near somebody dove hunting, they would probably shot it with bird shot.
Would that kill a hog?
If it was close enough, but unlikely.
But unlikely. So you have, in fact, ridden around Moselle without a gun to kill a hog, appropriate gun to kill a hog.
If I went over to the dove field, I wouldn't have one.
But you've never ridden as Paul and Al this afternoon, just looking at different, like where deer, what do they call them? What are the plant stuff for deer?
Food plots?
Yeah. Or
I've never that with that I recall, but I could have in the past, but I'd have a recollection.
or where they planted some corn for, I guess, use corn for deer and ducks.
You do, but you don't put them in the same spot.
One would be near a pond or in a pond or around a pond.
Correct. They had a duck.
And then others would just be where the deer might come out. Right.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
You've never rode around like that with them, looking at different plants that you
I don't have a specific of doing that with Elliot.
but in the jury that they would do that without they could, I mean, would it bother you or you or scare you right around the property time of that?
I have questions about normal. You're looking for hogs or my property. I mean, most people carry a gun, but no, I have no idea what they had with them, what they were doing.
And Al testified they were looking for some hogs because back in the night, they come out more like
They could not shot a lot of hogs at the time, right up on them.
but has anybody testified they were looking to shoot that?
I don't know. This trial.
All I'm saying is you see around with an AR or a blackout. You can't do that, right?
I cannot.
Okay. So let's talk about the night of June. You agree with me that well, let's ask it this way. What your practice is primarily personal injury. Is that correct?
It is.
Catastrophic injuries.
And
Way example, maybe you could give me something more specific. Husband's killed, wife's severely injured. That kind of thing. Now, your experience in people who undergo, maybe not hurt, but their loved one is hurt, maybe killed, in that situation, it's a traumatic experience for the surviving person, correct? To see their.
yes.
Okay. And so when you sit down with these folks and begin to recount with them what happened that night, oftentimes, I do work like you do, oftentimes those folks misremember or get time wrong, or because they went through the traumatic experience, and the closer that experience, the more likely they are to get some things wrong. Times, for instance. Is that your experience?
People involved in traumatic experiences try to be very supported me
And you don't the accident at night, do you? Typically.
typically you don't, because you don't know it that it's happened.
Sometimes in the old days they used to do that. They don't do that anymore, right?
That would be very rare.
So you're seeing this weeks later,
It can be days.
and in that aspect, it's more to them being as active as possible, right?
But oftentimes we also have the benefit of interviews when there's catastrophic injury. Typically, the highway patrol will get shot at people as quickly as they can. And they will have it on video or written statements.
And written statements, witnesses saw it happen.
Correct.
When you interview those people, they have the benefit of reviewing whatever you have to help them get better. Correct? Okay. So, we're talking about where Alec told you he turned him over before he made the 911 call, whatever it was. I'm not quite sure. Before, I think is what you said. That would be inconsistent with something he says later on. Looking at video, that's not unusual in your business. You just said it would not be unusual, correct? Look, right.
You're trying to take me somewhere that you don't want to.
No, I think I want to. And
Question?
withdraw the question. Let me ask you this question. Maybe we get to the meat of matter here. Have you come out of pocket to pay back the money he stole?
Yes, and if
How much? Don't tell me you don't know.
well, accountant Mr. Harpootlian,
Well, how much have you paid so far?
had borrowed millions to pay back.
No. How much had to come out of pocket?
Well, when you borrow it, you got to pay it back. And I couldn't tell you how much has exactly been paid back as of we sit here today. But
10
yes,
million.
and if you're implying that I would come in here and somehow shade truth in any way because of that, I would take offense with that, Mr.
I'm
Harpootlian.
concerned about your high offense. Are you angry at him for stealing your money?
I have no feeling one way or the
I
other.
don't have any feeling about Alec Murdaugh betraying you and stealing your money. I admire you. I don't know that I could look beyond that.
It's sustained. It's not a question. Disregard the argument.
You are not angry at Alec Murdaugh.
Extreme anger, Mr. Harpootlian did to my firm, my partner, my client, his clients, our clients, what he did to his family, what he's did to so many people. Yes, I experienced a lot of anger.
And
But you can't walk around with anger. You have to find a way to deal with it and move board, and I have done that. And if you suggest you are dead wrong, if you think I've come in here and told the jury something because of money, we're talking about two people who are brutally. You're dead wrong. I don't have any materials you have.
Well, let me ask you this. You with them, stole millions of dollars from your firm. Your firm's not even called the Murdaugh firm anymore, right?
It is not admit that I'm angry right now. I've gotten away from that. I don't have feelings because with anger. I have been very angry about what he's done, and he did it in a very callous way, a very deceitful way.
It's also there. Were you angry just a moment ago?
No, you keep trying to put the question and don't want to accept my answer, which is what it is.
That you've just given your Zen, your Nirvana, your whatever the.
Mr. Harpootlian,
Forgiven him?
I came to the scene of these murders. My partner, I was there. I saw things that hadn't even been talked about in this courtroom. I was there. I love Paul very much. I thought I knew it was. It's hard to walk around with anger and hard to even walk around with you didn't understand. So you might have, but you know, I've got a family. I got to move on with life.
Were you aware that he was in 2007?
I was not. What was said about Alex in court.
You never were aware.
I was unaware.
Sort of.
And if it had been known, I would have tried to help him.
Indicated that he was emotional in trying a case, right?
His father and grandfather in the courtroom theatrics could be emotional.
Any of your other partners that way? Johnny Parker?
No, Johnny's quite the opposite. Johnny's very
Laconic, I believe, is the best way to describe it.
he doesn't show emotion.
Nobody else in your firm was theatric emotional?
Not Alex level.
Any other lawyers that level?
You asked me a question right now. I don't know. You might yourself. I don't know what other lawyers usually try in cases against defense attorneys. So I don't see plaintiffs' lawyers anymore.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for one last thing. Where guy that he stole the money from? Mr. Bull, remember him?
Yes, I remember him.
How much money did you steal from him? Do you
70-something thousand in 2018. Mr. Bull died in September, I believe, 2018, and I believe they're 70-something thousand after Mr. Bull sometime in February of 2019.
You and your partner paid lawyer's estate or his folks back?
Yes, I met with him personally.
Okay. So it's your firm and it's millions to you. You have forgiven him? You bear him no ill?
I didn't forgive him.
You're just not angry about it anymore.
I said I have no feelings. And I had to work on that, Mr. Harpootlian. You know, we went through what we went through, not only the trauma of losing people we loved in a double homicide, seeing the aftermath, and then learning that someone you worked with for more than 20 years had stealing for throughout a period of time to see us. There's a lot of emotion there. And yes, it's going to fall. I have found a way to have no feelings. It's not this. It's just I have
You're not
any
angry
feelings.
here today. You're not angry.
I'm not.
Okay.
If I raise my voice because of the implication we're trying to
That you might not want to help Mr. destroy your firm. You have to pay back. You see if you'd answer yes or no.
All those things happen, and it does not influence my the oath that I took very seriously. If you have any indication that anything that was inaccurate, I'll be glad to address it with you.
Well, Judge, thank you.
Did you know, Alan?
Nice.
I want you to look you in the eye, day in and day out.
That is not appropriate redirect, and it's leading.
The objection is sustained.
Mr. Harpootlian asked you about some of the things you've gone through. And it's your issue, Mr. Harpootlian, questioning the implication in front of this jury.
Leading.
What is your concern, Mr. Harpootlian's questioning of you, that you expressed that to the jury? All that he just through with you sitting up on the stool having to deal with this problem with what he was trying to say.
Well, let's start with an oath to truth. We as lawyers also have oaths and obligations to a court, and it goes a lot deeper than the oath. We are bound by rules, national rules that I take very seriously as a lawyer. To my knowledge, I enjoy a very good integrity. That's what I took issue with. Attempting, because he cannot impugn my integrity.
That's fair. Would you take me to if you went out looking for hugs?
22 Magnum, which is a long rifle.
Which is a long rifle?
Yes.
You take a long rifle, not a pistol, correct?
Yeah, I would never, not a good shot with a pistol, but I would never take a pistol.
And what was Paul's favorite gun for shooting hogs with?
He loved 300 blackout, but
Further.
Your Honor, I just can't leave this alone. The evidence, his favorite, 300 blackout with a thermal scope.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Step down. I'll call your next witness.
Ronnie calls Dr. Riemer.
Do you swear to told you nothing but the truth to help you? State your name again, please, and spell your last name correctly.
Yes. It's Dr. Ellen Riemer, R-I-E-M-E-R.
And just everybody could seal the monitors, please, and the media be advised of that. Dr. Riemer, I want to move through this. Yes. And Dr. Riemer, I don't know if I'm necessarily even going to put them up on the screen. I am going to show you some images. I know the jury have seen these, and I don't want to belabor the point. I want to move quickly. But just quickly, you've been previously qualified as an expert in this trial in forensic pathology. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've done how many cases? Remind the jury, please.
Around 55 like last year, a few more.
You conduct autopsies of Paul and Maggie in this case?
Did both of the autopsies at the request of the Colleton County coroner, who called U.S. Forensic requesting autopsy of 2 individuals that died under his jurisdiction. I was not asked by the prosecution to perform an autopsy. It was an independent autopsy.
Your autopsy is independent, not heard by the prosecution or law enforcement or anything
No,
like that?
it's just at the request of the coroner.
All right. You've had a chance to testimony of the judges for the defense that testified yesterday?
Yes.
Right. General questions and some of the individual. Just very quickly, with skin tags, can you tell me the reliability of that in determining directionality, just as a general matter?
Yeah, well, we look at these things, but just like the thing at the autopsy, we take it in the context. So sometimes skin tags support your findings, and sometimes they're not really. Skin tags don't tell you necessarily the wound, especially going through very soft tissue.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibits 159, 160, and 161. And if you could take those out and just recognize those. What images of?
They're autopsy photographs of Maggie.
You've heard the testimony of the pathologist who testified yesterday that the directionality of injury side of Maggie's head, the abrasion actually going towards the bottom of the body up, correct?
Yes, that's
All
what I
right.
said.
And can you please look at the images that you have and explain to the jury your conclusions and why that defense pathologist is incorrect, and who didn't conduct the autopsy to begin with, why he's incorrect. You can, and let's just go ahead up on the screen. So I'll take them, and if you could sit down, please, if that's okay with you. All right, and that's Defense 160. And Dr. Riemer, if you can again give me your specific findings and how they relate to the testimony from yesterday.
Yes. So we have the on the clavicle area, and then we have an entrance defect. You can see a hole. It's a hole. And there's a defect in the left temporal lobe of the brain, which was included in my autopsy report. That could only have happened from that being an entrance wound.
Okay. And you mentioned during your testimony the concept of a diastatic fracture. Does that in any way relate to your conclusion in this regard?
The fracture is when there's a separation of skull bone lines which form, which solidify child. It takes a lot of radial pressure to fracture
Does that relate to the conclusion that this had to be an intrusion?
Yeah, well, that's a finding. That doesn't prove that this is an entrance wound, but what I do, I have a path through the left temporal lobe, and there's, that, and that is have a hole below the left ear, went into the brain, and that's not going to happen in the opposite way. And I understand that people use pictures, that's like a two-dimensional view, but doing the autopsy makes certain information available to the pathologist that is not available to an individual not doing the autopsy. And I had that information in my report, which was which was overlooked.
Overlooked by the defense pathologist.
Yes, I'm sure.
I'm going to show you now Exhibit 161. Some testimony from the defense pathologist about directionality from this particular. Can you please tell the jury why that pathologist is wrong?
All right. Well, when we have tears of the skin, and this is a lot of tears of the subcutaneous tissue, especially in a very soft area of the body, there's a lot of stretching, and it doesn't necessarily help. You can move the breath, or you can move the point to different direction. This is not aggressive. It's not even really observing any of the skin. It's really very non-specific, and I think he has a very good imagination for seeing that in this room. And sometimes they spear, sometimes they don't spear, but they don't take place of the bathroom showing it.
Defense 159. Is this a representation sort of hole that you determined and were able to see an entrance wound on the side of Maggie's head?
Yes.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Paul. And you heard the defense pathologist and their subsequent expert talk about there being a contact wound to the top of Paul's head. Is that correct?
That's what he said.
All right. And you, of course, have already testified during your direct testimony that there's no way for contact with your specific observation.
Well, I think it was necessary for every feature of whom demonstrates that the entrance was to the top of the left shoulder and then went into the left side of the head before exiting the top of the head. Now, before I go on, I do want to say that I agree with the book that keeps being brought up, that when there is a contact shotgun wound to the head, there's massive gas expansion within the cranial cavity, within the skull. And what that does, it doesn't just create a hole with bones. Understand this was the most thing you have ever seen. You probably can't imagine that the damage could be any worse. A shotgun wound to the head with the associated gas expansion to the skull would not have, his face was basically intact. He would have had tears skin, and his eyes would have been either displaced from the orbital bones. The orbital bones were intact. Anytime there's massive gas buildup within the cranial cavity from contact shotgun wound to the head, which the book does say is where the worst gas expansion, we would get on your face. He would not have a face left. I know what you saw. Absolutely. The damage would have been a lot worse. He would have had, the sides of his head down, and he would have had, his entire been split open, because there's no way all of that gas expansion could occur and not cause fractures of these delicates in the face. His forehead was even still there. So, I agree with the book that a contact shotgun wound would cause severe gas expansion and damage to the head. What we have here is not consistent with a contact shotgun wound. The damage to the head would have been much worse, even though this was already horrible. Okay, that being said, there are photographs.
What's already been admitted to evidence is State 486. And if you could, Doctor, just talk a little bit about this image as it illustrates what you're talking about with the face, but also, if you could, we'll go ahead and talk about what you with the face, and then I want to talk about the shoulder a little bit as well.
There's no skin like torn apart of his face. His eyes are still in the correct locations. You know, it's hard to imagine that it could be worse than a hole at the top right side of the back of the head. But in my 20-plus years of experience doing autopsies and seeing contact shotgun wounds to the head, which are associated with massive gas expansion in the skull, this entire face, he would have had tears. The eyes would have been either hanging down or lost, blown out. There's no way these features are consistent with a contact shotgun wound to the head.
Now, there's been some discussion about the defense pathologist about leaving the head stippling or checking for stippling. And can you comment on the necessity of that in your actual autopsy that you conducted?
Okay. So, he also said that sometimes we don't see the soot. Like he said, if Dr. Riemer shaved there, she would have had the opportunity to see soot. So suppose I didn't see soot, or I did see soot. First of all, I'm confident there would not have been soot, because the features of this are not consistent with a shotgun wound to that location. First of all, the damage to the head and face would have been far more severe than it was, and then also the wounds to the shoulder and left side of the cheek, all the features of any wounds.
All right. And one of the things discussed by the defense experts was sort of the large sort of oblong. Can you explain how that does not contradict your findings of a shot coming this way? Here, I'm going to actually defense exhibit 162.
At the end of the wound, then it would look to him as if the pellets are going down. But we can see this is actually an entrance wound for disease. First of all, if it were an exit wound, do you remember all those pellet exit wounds on Paul's left arm that came from the chest? The pellets are not just going to stop the shoulder. There's like resistance there. The pellets are going to continue going until they exit the left side of the arm. Okay, so they don't just stop there. The reason they're there is that's because they started there. Okay. In addition, you see all of this white material here on the edge of the entrance wound. That's styrofoam packing material that's between the pellets. So the pellets are contained within wadding, and there's styrofoam packing material between, and that would never have been deposited there. So I did not think it was when I was telling you the direction of this wound. I did not have to necessarily. It was my expert. I'm expert at determining forensic pathology includes establishing the direction of wounds, and because of all of these things, this is determination. Okay, now there's another feature of this photograph. Do you see that this is coming into the left side of the, this is what I, left side of the cheek. And the classic, what we saw had that those little petals. So we knew that the line was starting to open up. But in this case, there was wadding that was probably open as well. We have some pellets already starting to come out. You know, it's not entering the wadding, but the wadding is going along and entering them. And we have all this abrasion around the left side of the cheek, the chin neck area. And that's consistent with, we're not going to have that abrasion if it's coming out. It's going to push the skin out, not abrasion. So, you know, all that but even just common sense, we have that styrofoam packing material on the outside of the arm. My determination, this went up through the left cheek, outside of the top of the head. If it were a entry wound, packed to the head, I don't care whether, there's no way his entire facial bones, there's so much gas expansion that the damage to his head would have been much worse. So that's based on my experience for doing this. And, you know, I just don't know how, I didn't mention that stuff from happening, but that's from the pellets are coming in. And he said, oh, you can see they're going down. That's because he's looking from above. So but if you look at where I believe, by this autopsy, that the entrance wound is, it's actually going upward. So it depends which side of the pellet you're looking at. And just logically, if this was an exit, the pellets wouldn't just stop. They've got a huge amount of energy. They're going to continue through and have individual pellets. They wouldn't have all just been concentrated right there. So, you know, we can use our powers of logic, which I think, you know, we all have, to understand how this is an entrance wound that exited the right side of the top of the head.
Dr. Riemer, having specifically, and you can take a seat now, thank you very much, having specifically addressed the specific criticisms of the defense pathologist, and your expert having actually done the autopsies in this case, is there any way that could have been a contact wound to the top of the head?
No.
All right. And having addressed the specific concerns of the testimony of the defense pathologist, is your concern still that the shot went extra strong for this?
Yes, I disagree with his conclusions.
Dr. Riemer, good to see you again.
Hello.
So, you took pictures, correct?
I took more pictures now, but I took pictures.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I would have. I wish I took even more pictures.
So do we. So, you made notes, which you converted into an autopsy report.
It's a standard rate.
Yeah, but so, and that's done so that somebody else can look at your see if they disagree with you.
No, the notes are a work product for me while I'm preparing, doing my examination. I don't always, I take notes, I write numbers, but that is really for me so I can incorporate findings into autopsy. At the table, I go away, maybe I'm going to do it the next day. So, you know, but it's on, you know, people say, okay, autopsy done. Well, these are not autopsy diagrams that are meant for other people to look at, and sometimes they even complete because I mark things on side of the body that later on, during the course of the autopsy, I determined, I'm like, oh, well, that's what that is. And it may not be what I initially wrote down. But by the time the autopsy's over, I've put it all together. And that a diagram or notes do not necessarily reflect everything, that I concluded.
Do you still have your notes in this case?
I imagine they would be in the file, but as I told you, this is my notes are not necessarily the conclusion that I came to.
Did you produce them to the
I don't know what I did. I personally, if they were asked for, I'm sure I did.
Did you produce them?
No, I don't remember producing them at all. I don't have a request for those notes in my file.
But those notes would be your present sense impression as you're doing the autopsy, correct?
Well, they can have a lot of things written down.
No, because we didn't get them, right?
Not important. What's important is they're my notes. They're for me. They're an aid to the pathologist. Even if I thought something initially, and then while I do the autopsy, by the time I get to the end, it's brief. It's work product for me to and write.
Did you review your testimony?
Well, I report, correct?
Right, but you don't use your notes. So, let me ask you here. Like the muzzle of the shot goes through his neck, it was about 3 feet away.
That would be about right.
Page you described.
Oh, I've seen it many times.
Okay. And as you see, the gas comes right.
Yes.
Flow back of gas. As we can see right here, which is the pellets, are extruded from the barrel. I think the gas is
The gas expansion that helps propel the pellets. Yes, I agree with the book. It's not contact shotgun wound to the top of the head.
okay. Well, but what the book does say is that as the pellets come out, at some point they begin to the container opens and the pellets expand or a pattern, a circular pattern. It becomes as the way you wrap.
Yes. We can see on the left shoulder they're fairly clustered together because they're first starting to be released from the wadding, and they did spread out. We have some of the and so I don't know, your yes, expected treatment.
Really?
Well, it doesn't matter. I can look at my photo. I can look, if you talk to me, the photo.
Doctor, I'd ask you to
Please answer.
be responsive. On a tribe, excuse me, I'm asking the court to instruct her to answer the question as specifically she can. She goes off on tangents. And I'm sorry.
Our privilege. Continue the question.
You remember what the question was?
No, that's your question.
Is this series of shots depicting a contact wound? I think that's what I understand.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So where, if you step down here, show me, please, where the contact is with the body or the head. Here, let me point it.
contact would be at the first.
Right here. Well, what's it contacting?
It's just a theoretical depiction. It's a theoretical.
Is that what the book says?
Yeah. Well, I don't recall the exact. Why don't you read it to me?
Well, why don't you tell me, is that a contact wound?
I don't know what this is. This is.
That's a shotgun.
That's not.
Being fired. Those are the pellets coming out.
Object
Those are
counsel
the pellets.
testify.
Yeah, I think showing the series of steps after a shot fire, but it has nothing to do with what I found in the body, and does not help me determine the direction of the wound.
All right. So
I'm not going to describe. You can read it in the book. I don't remember how he says all of this.
the book isn't testifying. You are. If you've testified, that depicts a contact wound. Yes?
Well, I don't know what this is depicting. It could be that this is a contact wound. I don't know where you're going with this.
Well, here's where I'm going. Is that barrel in contact with anything?
It's not in contact with anything. It looks like it's just blowing into the air.
Okay, and you've been. And your testimony is that barrel is at least 3 feet away from Paul's shoulder. Is that correct?
It could be, depending on the weapon, it could be, it's not closer than 2 feet because we don't have it. But we do have packing material.
Okay. So, as we see here, these pellets are beginning to separate. Is it your testimony that those pellets had separated when they hit Paul's shoulder at all?
They are starting to separate. We don't have the complete, widening of it. They're still relatively clustered together, but they're not as close as they would be if they were still contained within the wadding.
Okay, now, at 2 feet, is there any gas left, or is it all dissipated like this picture shows?
Well, what we have here, if there was more gas, if there was a contact wound to here,
It's not a contact.
I understand. Gas, you're wanting me to say yes or no, and
Yes
I
or no.
can't because I have the knowledge of how this relates to examining the body.
Okay,
I
so-
don't give theoretical talks or I don't start looking up in this book while I'm doing an autopsy. I use my practical reasoning, my experience, and knowledge.
If there'd been gas in the wound, when it hit the shoulder or his back, would you expect to find some evidence of that?
Well, there would have been, a lot more expanded. This was fully contained on the.
So you would estimate with little or no gas going to his shoulder to his neck.
Well, there is always some gas. It's not the kind of gas that we get in a contact shot.
Exactly. So, go ahead and take the inquiry. Sorry, it's going to take a minute to get. No, not that one. Paul.
I don't remember the number off the top of my head. It'll be there somewhere. 160.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the jury room for a break, please do not discuss the case. Step down to not discuss your testimony with anyone. It'll take about 10 minutes.
Come to order. Be seated.
You may bring the jury.
Jury is present, sir.
All right, you may continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got it here. Idea. Doctor, I'd ask you to look at this photo, if this is one of the photos from your autopsy.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. Now, I'd offer this defense exhibit number 195 into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admit it.
So could we put that up on the screen, please? Before I lose it, let me hand this to... So, what are we looking at here?
Do you want me to come? There it is.
No, tell me what it is.
Yeah. So this is an entrance shotgun wound to the left shoulder area.
And a moment ago, something about packing material. Packing material.
Yes. There's foam. Is frequently in between pellets.
I can't hear her because the door. Again. Packing material. Let's start over again. Tell me again.
Yes. So it's frequently present in along with the pellets that sort of
You got the powder wadding pellets, and are these? Is it in the pellets, or is it close behind it? Wadding, or?
it's within the water.
Okay, and you indicated you saw some.
Well, that is very consistent with a little bit of packing material, as we have pellets into the shoulder and some of the materials depositing on the skin.
And is this a picture of the packing material?
There is some the white material, yes, on the skin. Correct.
Did you know?
No, it's a general observation.
Okay. Is it important it was there?
It didn't matter to me whether it's there or not, but it does reinforce that it is.
you concede is not in your autopsy report.
All the totality of my victims, or a little thing in my autopsy report. I could go on that it could be 50 pages in autopsy report. I include the things, determination, and I could have mentioned it, but I did not. Because it's not necessary to mention that kind of thing.
Evidence of any.
Well, I do believe that that supports an entrance wound, although I don't require myself to see it in order to make that determination.
But you agree with me, supports your conclusion, correct?
Yes.
You didn't put in your autopsy report.
Correct.
Could it be notes?
No.
Okay. So, and could you step down here and show me what the packing material looks like? And there's a pointer right over there behind you. You probably want to stand here so the jurors over there can see it.
Yes. This is what I believe to be consistent with packing material.
And do you remove any of that to be analyzed or forensically examined?
No, I don't.
While we're looking at this picture, you can actually see some shot in there, right? And that shot is that? I mean, that's pretty. That area right there is wider than this entrance would be cheek, is it not?
Yes, this entrance wound is larger than this entrance wound here. And I believe actually there is enlargement of wound as it goes along, but in this case we have a wound going along the top of the shoulder, so it's going to be oblong. As it enters the left, it's entering more right angle, perpendicular to the jaw. It's going to appear small, and that has nothing to do with spreading of pellets.
Okay, let's ask. You see that pellet clearly there, right? And then you see the pellet above. See that? Right. Right. Let me put my glasses on. Is that a pellet?
Yeah.
Okay. So we step back so this person can see. We have correct?
Well, they're kind of banging against each other. We have the wound track is from left to right, and we do have pellets that are in there. They didn't they stopped in there, so they're not contained.
How many pellets were captured in his shoulder?
I captured. I don't know how many I captured. I collected a sampling of the pellets that were along the wound path.
But you took X-rays.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily the total amount, because some of them exited and some were in the brain. So the X-rays were taken without the brain in the head because the brain came separately.
Okay, but they did send you the brain.
Yes.
Did you take X-rays of the brain?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I didn't take X-rays of the brain
And the
because
reason-
I
go ahead.
determined that wasn't necessary for me at the time.
To support your conclusion.
I didn't take X-rays of the brain. I guess hindsight is always 20/20. I could have taken X-rays of the brain. I could have taken more photos. I could have taken a photo of the brain at the autopsy time, and I would have liked to. But I can tell from the examination of the body that I had an entrance wound along the left shoulder, and it's exiting at the top of the head. It's not a contact wound to the top of the head.
Okay.
That's my determination.
Okay, but the reason you didn't take X-rays of the brain is to already reach your conclusion. You need it.
Well, I did not, because I comfortable with my determination.
Take X-rays of the brain.
Well, I don't always take X-rays of every organ. I was comfortable I would be able to do some pellets of the brain. Was necessary to show X-ray.
How many cases have you called
it out of the head.
Well, as the book describes it,
Well, I think that the determination that an entrance wound to the top of the head, contact range, all of that gas expansion would not have escaped that. There would have been a defect, cavity, or fragmentation of the brain, which was not there. You can see the brain actually.
do you remember what my original question was?
What was your question?
Okay. The question was, how many cases have you done an autopsy of a contact wound to the top of the head which wasn't a suicide?
Very, very few.
Less than one?
I don't remember exactly. It's not a tip. Usually contact shotgun wounds. Usually contact wounds are suicides.
And typically in the mouth?
They can be under the
Under the
chin,
chin.
in the mouth. Sometimes they're to the side of the head. There are people who shoot themselves on the top of the head as well. And I can't recall exactly if I remember any of that.
And in all those cases, the brain that explode out of the cranium?
No.
Okay. So you would agree with me that the way that strike of the shoulder. You can go ahead and take your seat if I come up there.
Yes, they are pellets, and I have his shoulder kind of out when I take the wound. We have some pellets remaining in the shoulder area. We have some disruption. Spread out as they're going closer to the neck.
So there are pellets in the top of the arm, shoulder, where is it? Right up in here?
Yes.
Okay. And then additional pellets, looks like below that.
That's because it's starting to spread. Yes.
And it's starting to spread to get to this place right here.
What place?
Is this where the, I mean,
Yeah. It's that's the part of the neck. So we have some. This is chest. It did not go into the chest.
okay, let me see that. What was that? Okay, let me see. Okay, and where is that?
That is the top of the left shoulder and left hand.
Was there?
Yes.
Right in this area, right? Okay. Next, I think one more X-ray. Okay, and are there any pellets here? Or are those the same pellets there at the bottom?
Yeah,
We
well,
see-
you can see there are pellets here. You can see them in the head. Pellets in the head. The brain is not within the cranial cavity. You do see pellets here on the side. See, or there's the hole at the top of the head, and some of the pellets are they're spread out on the right side. Well, I can see 3 here, outside of the head.
Okay. So, how many pellets are there in a 12-gauge shotgun shell, and these are used primarily for duck hunting.
I don't know. Sir. I'm an expert at examining human bodies and determining the injuries that occurred, and I don't know how many pellets would be. When I took my boards, I may have had to actually know that, but I don't. This is not. I don't use this information in order. You can ask this expert.
We did. I think they said something like between.
I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not going to disagree with the ballistics expert. And outside of the back of the head.
How many pellets were in the body?
I did not count them. I just collect a representative sample of it. I don't collect all of them, and I don't count all of them.
And we know you don't know how many were in the brain because you didn't X-ray the brain. Correct.
That's correct.
But if there were 7 pellets or 75 pellets in his shoulder, his chest, and his neck, and hypothetically there were anywhere between 135 and 160 pellets in the normal duck shot, that's 40 pellets on, for the sake of argument, correct?
Well,
my math.
I don't
use
really.
My math.
I don't feel comfortable answering these questions because it's not. The specific ballistics are not my area of expertise.
I'm not going to do
I don't feel comfortable answering them. I examine bodies and come to my determination based on wounds, and you can see that's a shot going up right there. And questions about number, I really want to just. I can't answer that because I don't know everything. I'm an expert, I'm a physician, expert examining and manner.
back to the original question, and
I don't know the answer to the shot how many pellets there would be.
we're not asking you how many pellets, but if there are 75, let's do some math.
Do math.
75 pellets we can count in the body, the chest, the neck, and there's anywhere from 135, 155 in the normal duck shot, 12 gauge shot.
Right. So 75 plus 60, that would be 135. And then what did you say, 70 or 80?
75.
Okay. 75 plus 150. So that's your answer. If your question is, you're asking me to do the math.
So the question is this. After those pellets have gone the shoulder and hit bone, apparently, correct?
Yes.
And they go through the neck. They hit more bone there?
Was some damage to the cartilage of the trachea. It was in the wall and skull. There's not like bone. It's only bone, really. In,
Right.
it's,
Well, I guess what I'm saying, when you were talking about Maggie a moment ago, and you talked about a shot that I think grazed her skull, you said there was a lot of intracranial pressure. Is that right? So I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you can help me. Your testimony is there was enough from the half the load that goes through to, was it one place it hit? Was it had to go through the brain?
I some of it may sit on top of that. I don't know, or went into the brain. I did not break the brain, and I don't know exactly how many, but we can. This is the direction.
Was the brain separated?
No, it was largely maceration from the brainstem. It was pretty much surprisingly intact. a shotgun wound.
Have you looked at the photos?
I really didn't look at the and kind of
The brain was catapulted out of his head, hit the ceiling, and then landed outside.
well, that brain out of that
And based on your previous testified, that it would not be that the gas from 2 or 3 feet away would not travel through the arm, travel through the neck, and then go to the brain.
lot of also there's a lot of in that direction. With gas or not, it's energy from portions of ammunition propelling. So, whether you want to call it gas, or whether, I really don't know. I'm sure I examined the body and I made the determination on the direction and the type of injury from examining the
It seems to indicate that the primary cause for an explosion, this brain exploding out, is the gas. You would agree?
Well, I think each case is a little bit different, and the kind of gas that would cause the head to explode would also, I think the book is talking about gas, gas in a contact shotgun wound. So what is your question about the book? I would actually have to refresh my recollection, because I don't really I haven't read the book in a long time, but I know what I've seen on the body.
If I quote this to you, you would, and I can show it to you. The gas entering the closed chamber of the head rapidly, adding to the pressure waves acting on the bony framework of the skull. The only way for the skull to relieve the pressure produced is to shatter.
Yes, that actually must be describing a contact wound, okay? Because that's really makes sense for a contact shotgun wound.
And your reasoning for this, the same phenomenon that happened without the gas is?
Well, we've got injury coming from beneath. This is, like I told the jury, that is not shattered. We do have some, but the shattering of the skull, it is still up intact. We don't have shattering of every bone. We don't have shattering of the face. So
Why didn't you shave the head?
Why didn't shave the head?
Were you looking for any, if much of the skull is still there?
Look, my determination, I didn't shave the head because I was confident that that was an exit wound on the right side of the top of the head. It wasn't necessary for me to shave an exit wound.
So, but if you had shaved the head, and again, you come to your opinion by this point, you could have seen whether it was soot or stippling or distortion around, or taken samples of the hair and determine whether or not there was any sort of GSR in it, which would be more consistent with a contact wound.
Well, no, GSR can just be we know gunshot residue can deposit. I'm not like ballistics is not necessarily my strongest. Know that GSR can deposit, within a few feet. Somebody doesn't have to indicate a contact wound.
Okay, so did the shot penetrate the jawbone?
It through the through that area. I believe it actually may have went underneath the bone.
So it did not connect with the bone. Correct?
Yes.
Are any of the pellets that you see in the shoulder, the left shoulder, heading down instead of up?
There's probably kind of a billiard ball effect when these things are going through, and there could be some. But I didn't make that determination because it wasn't important to me to make that determination. What? something like post photograph doesn't really tell you the whole story. I did my autopsy. I was confident in the direction of this path, and I'm not trying to say, oh, well, which direction are the pellets going? I can see that there's the entrance wound was to the top of the left shoulder, went through the left side of the neck, out the top of the head.
How many pellets made it through the brain to the skull? To fracture the skull? How many?
There's some pellets in the brain. I don't know how many.
Because you didn't X-ray. So, since you count the number of pellets, tell the jury, please, how you know how many pellets hit the skull and fractured it and allowed the eruption to occur.
I don't know how many. I never said
No, I didn't say you said it.
to that.
It's not important.
It doesn't really matter. Medical. I examined bodies and I made my determination based on examination of the body.
It's true that an autopsy report will be read by an independent pathologist to come to a conclusion. Okay.
Voices. Who's talking? You're questioning the witness. Proceed.
I'm asking to put up exhibit number.
I didn't hear you talking. I heard
Oh, I'm
you were
sorry.
questioning the witness, and then
I
a
may
strange
have mumbled.
voice
I
comes from.
apologize. What's the exhibit? Okay. So, how about step down here, please? And over there, please, so the jury can see. So you indicated there were. I asked you if you shaved the head. You said no. You said wasn't enough of the skull there to determine what happened. Is it?
Well, entirety of the and I did not need to shave the hair. That was my opinion and determination at the time.
Yes, ma'am. We understand that, but what did you to confirm, or did you already come to your opinion?
Well, I always am questioning it myself during the autopsy. It's not just take a long time to look at everything before I reach a conclusion. Okay, so the totality of findings here told me this was an exit wound. The brain came pretty much intact. It was propelled at the top of out at the top of the head. I believe and I'm confident that the exit wound, and I did not for investigation to rule out an entrance wound because I was confident it was not.
So you just said you did not. You were confident, and you did not look for it because you were confident you were right.
Well, I looked at it, and it's consistent with an exit. Consistent with an exit. The brain came out of that defect. If it were a shotgun entrance wound, there would be a lot more destruction of the head.
And again, you've never seen a contact wound to the head that wasn't in a suicide case.
You know, I don't honestly remember that.
So you don't remember. Let me rephrase. You don't remember having a case involving a contact wound to the head that wasn't a suicide case.
I may have. It's possible. I did not survey. You know, I may have seen one where somebody was shot at point blank range with a shotgun, and then the entire head is gone. So when I get that, you know, if it was a contact shotgun, whether it's suicide or homicide, the entire head would have been basically blown off.
And so in every case, well, there's no reason to because you've never seen, don't remember ever seeing a case of contact wound the back of the head.
Whether it's or inflicted by somebody else. The features of the body are going to be the same. So that's my answer. Whether I remember it or not, I've done a lot of autopsies. I don't necessarily remember how many or if I've done one, but I imagine people are shot at close contact range with a shotgun. And in a contact shotgun, like suicide, this is here, and I don't care and that's my that's fine. I have to convince them. This is my determination based on my education and multiple years of experience doing autopsies and being a forensic pathologist.
And you, I think in your testimony, whenever that was weeks ago, you conceded pathologists can.
Yes, I think a reasonable, I said, you asked me if a reasonable person, you didn't actually ask me if a reasonable pathologist, you asked me if a reasonable person could have a different opinion. And I remember that because I was sorry that I didn't say, well, of course, reasonable people can think that. But a reasonable pathologist could also think that, but I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't think all opinions, reasonable pathologists could have an opinion like that, but I could really be wrong.
But go ahead and take the stand, please. Have you discussed met and discussed with Dr. Kinsey, about his findings?
I did meet with him once when a couple of weeks prior to the autopsy. I really never, prior to this trial, I met with the prosecution's team. And I would have been available to meet with you if you called me as well. But Ken Kinsey was responsible for the crime scene. What he had to say was, I really wasn't my decision, my determination based on my examination of the body, and whatever it was, he's going to do that. So I don't remember a specific conversation.
You don't remember talking to him about Vector, what would have gone? And
yeah. Well, he asked me, he said, do you know anything about this? And I said, that's your department. I really am not a blood spatter expert. So I had nothing to offer, and I really didn't encourage listening to it because it's not my area.
And let me a couple things. One is you indicated that you did not put packing material in your autopsy report, correct?
Yes.
And they first time not packing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just sort of summarize this and see if we can get this over with. There are certain things you did not do in this autopsy because you concluded it wouldn't be helpful in reaching your conclusion, correct?
I agree.
X-ray the brain.
I did not x-ray the brain.
And you wounded shoulder so much bigger is because of the angle?
Yes.
Okay. And then you could see the hole in that. Out wider, I think we confirmed that.
The defect on the shoulder is
Right.
wider because it's kind of going across the shoulder. So it's going to create a defect on the shoulder that's wider than something bringing a right angle or perpendicular. So that's And I think that makes sense to me. It's consistent with what I've seen in more than 20 years of my practice, and there wasn't anything that seemed off about that. Kind of ballistic. Some forensic pathologists know a lot about ballistics. I know probably an average amount.
You say it started out wider and then came to this hole. Have you discussed with any ballistics experts?
It doesn't require, that's pathology. That's damage to the body. I don't need to be a ballistics expert, and I've done enough autopsies on shotguns to make that determination without additional ballistics knowledge.
But we can see that the shotgun starts out, the shot starts small and then the pellets expand.
Objection sustained.
Why there's no shot in his cheek if it's expanded? Why are there no bullet holes here?
Because that's wanting going in there.
Probably.
Yeah, I think that is. You know, entering, we have pellets not terminate in the cheek. They continue. No.
But a number of them terminated in the shoulder,
Yes.
in the chest, up here, right?
Yes.
I mean, they stop expanding here. So
Objection asked and answered to the former question.
Your Honor.
Asked and answered. I sustain the objection.
The declaration consists of your opinion.
Yes.
Oh, let me ask you one question about the women. Your position is tags don't.
Well, they not determined. There's something. Not very good test. We have more reliable. Their skin is tight.
Maggie, one shot's going up and the other one's down.
Yes. Over 5,500.
You rely on observations of actually observing the body. Is that correct?
That's correct. I my autopsies and based on my experience, as a pathologist, I know bodies. That's what I rely on.
And your
Those are two questions.
opinion is there any face would remain intact if it's covered with that wound in the back of the head? In your opinion, is this obviously a wound direction as you've done?
Repetitive. She's testified 5 times. That's her opinion.
The objection is.
Thank you. No.
Thank you. You sit down.
Thank you.
You're next with.
Our state calls T.C. Smalls.
Raise your hand.
swear affirm that any testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You sir, sit right up there. State your full name for the record and spell your last name.
My name is Thomas Smalls. Folks call me TC Smalls. SMALLS.
Sheriff Smalls, how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
All right. Tell the jury just a little bit about yourself. And I called you sheriff, so if you could just kind of explain that to them a little bit.
Okay. Law enforcement, 39 years. I retired in 16, 39 years. I served as sheriff in the county. And just trying to enjoy some retirement. Retired December 31. First day of December 2022.
Sorry to pull you back in. You said you just retired. Murdaugh. Have you known him for years?
Yeah.
Did you him asking you
never had a with anyone. 39 years and installed blue light in their personal vehicle.
something? As a result of the boat case, the boat case.
No, we never have.
Nothing.
Well, it's 12:01. Good afternoon, Sheriff.
How you doing?
My name is Griffin.
Okay.
The horse, this pollen's getting to me, but it won't take long. You've known Alec Murdaugh for many, many years, is that correct?
Correct.
And he was a volunteer solicitor in Hampton County, 14th Circuit, for a number of years, correct?
I realized he worked along with I thought he was assistant, but father in Hampton County.
The position of solicitor,
Yes, he did.
he worked with father,
Right.
trying cases in Hampton County and perhaps Collin and other places. You aware of that?
Sir.
And are you trying any case? And his father, and he was police. Alec Murdaugh issued a badge for that position.
So I was,
Your question about permission that you gave him to have blue light installed, and you said he did not. Do you know Anthony Russell gave him permission?
I can't answer that.
Now who's
Well, time Sheriff Anthony Russell, my ministry, he became sheriff after I retired, ran in the office of sheriff, and he's in office now.
And he was not, man, he was pretty high in your administration.
He was a captain.
Okay. And Chauncey Solomon was, and England, he was passed away. What was his position?
He was a lieutenant.
And you know, Deputy Russell, Deputy Solomon, Deputy Singleton were very close to Alec Murdaugh. Were you aware of that?
Well, I knew they knew him. I don't know how close they were.
Okay. And did Eddie Gibson install the blue lights on the vehicles for the Sheriff's Department?
Not for my cause. Most of my vehicles light was done with a company out of Orangeburg, and then later we started working with a gentleman by the name of Charles Mitchell that installed lights, and he out of, I think, Hardyville or Bluffton.
So you don't know who Eddie? Do you know who Eddie Gibson is?
Oh, I know who Eddie Gibson. He worked for me at one time.
And when he worked for you, did he install lights? He worked for vehicles, the fleet of vehicles?
No, not my vehicle.
When he worked for you, what did he do?
He was a deputy sheriff.
And I'm familiar. At any point in time, Mr. Murdaugh had a blue light in his vehicle.
I never had any knowledge that he had lights in his vehicle.
Oh, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
May we approach very quickly?
Call your next witness.
Spell last name.
Paul McMahon, M-C-N-I-G-A-L.
All right. Good afternoon. Sergeant McMahon, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're employed with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office? And you testified previously in this trial, correct?
Yes, I have.
Just briefly remind me exactly what topic you testified earlier. Briefly.
I was tasked with redacting Alec Murdaugh's cell records to remove any possible attorney-client privileged information.
All right. And during that testimony, you were not qualified as an expert, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Been qualified in previous trials?
Yes, I have.
And how many times have you been qualified as an expert previously in other trials? 10 times. Okay. And that in cell phone?
Part of it, six times in cell phone rights, the other way around too.
All right. And just let's briefly go down as quickly as you can. Let's go through your experience in cell phone forensics, please.
I'm currently in the United States Service, Fraud Task Force, which is where I received most of my training. I have been trained in basic computer evidence recovery, computer forensics, oxygen screening, blacklight examiner, advanced mobile device examiner, Celebrate physical logical examination, XRY certification training, Macintosh triage and imaging, Apple iDevice forensics, Celebrate advanced JTAG extraction, network response, digital video recorder, ransomware investigation response training, and several other webinars.
At this time, we'll see if it as an action in self-defense. Last week, you were present when a gentleman named Mark just testified. That's correct?
That is correct.
And specifically, he testified about this iPhone. Explain to you what that function is and what it serves as in the cell phone, the iPhone, excuse me.
Raise to wake is when the cell phone is laying down and you pick it up. It realizes picking up the device and tries to assist by turning on the device so that you unlock it.
And so it's designed to turn on that screen when it thinks someone's picking up the phone to look at the screen, correct?
That is correct.
All right. There's been previous testimony, I think, by Mr. Sturgis and other experts in this case that the phone, if the screen is off, it will not record an orientation change, correct?
If the screen is off, it will not record an orientation.
And you agree with that opinion?
I agree.
And you were asked after Mr. Sturgis' testimony to investigate a little bit more of the way raised feature, correct?
I was.
And specifically, as rated with yours, the screen is going to turn on when the phone is picked up.
Correct.
Because the phone thinks it's being picked up to be looked at, correct?
That is correct.
You're asked to investigate with a test device whether that screen lights up every time it's picked up in a more violent fashion or quicker fashion, correct?
Correct. When the phone is picked up or moved more aggressively, the device will not be on the screen.
Because the way it raised to wake feature is based off of what? What's telling it to wake up?
The accelerometer.
And so accelerometer is motion, correct?
Correct.
But since it's slow motion, it's on because it thinks someone's picking up the wake, correct? If the cell phone only detects motion, what does it do? What does the iPhone do?
So if the phone registers a slight amount of motion, it thinks it's being picked up on the screen. If it's being picked up more aggressively, and that's the battery protection feature. If you had the iPhone, you don't want the screen to so when the be more aggressive. That is correct. iPhone 11
All right. And what?
That was on my 14.8. One was on Mac. So the iOS was on my device that I tested.
Before and with motions and various throws with phones to determine, and we're able to develop an opinion of when the screen might come on and when it might not.
Yes, I prefer many tests over the weekend. I pick it up and take it, throw it, and I threw it off to knocked it off of my desk. I tried to flip it over it. I tried to throw it like a frisbee. I did each one at least 20 times.
Okay. And were the results conclusively? I mean, don't do the same thing every time?
No, not at all. Sometimes the screen would turn on. When I threw it, laying face up, and it would turn on. A lot of times I would throw it, and the screen would not turn on. It depends on how the accelerometer registers.
So based off the test, is your opinion that same model as Maggie's could be thrown and the screen not turned on?
Can't lead the witness.
All right. Did you develop an opinion about whether the screen would turn on every time a phone was thrown?
If the phone is thrown, the screen does not always turn on. In my experimentation, I determined that when the phone is thrown 9-10 times, the screen does not turn on. The times it did turn on most often was when I pick it up and tried to shake it, then the screen would come on briefly.
But 9 out of 10 times when you toss a phone like a Frisbee, the screen would not turn on, correct?
That is correct.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When you perform these experiments, did you do them in any way? Did you record? Consider these experiments? Did the experiments sort of orally play when you could have had a video to show us?
That is correct.
If you were going to throw a phone from a moving vehicle, would you need to pick it up, to toss it?
Certainly.
And if I understand the previous testing, when you put the screen on?
When you pick it up gently.
If you pick it up to toss it out the window while you're driving, you got to pick it up. Is that correct?
Correct. And if you pick it up aggressively, it will not.
Always.
No.
Sometimes will, sometimes.
Correct.
According to the experiments that you conducted since, when did you do these experiments?
I started it Friday afternoon and to Saturday.
So you did these experiments this week?
Correct.
You did not record any data?
I did not.
You just played with the phone and are coming here to express your observations?
That's correct.
Do you have the phone that you use to do these experiments with you?
Not with me.
Are you aware of how the phone in this, Maggie's phone in this case, how it was located, what its position was? Have you seen the photos?
I have.
Screen.
It was.
Would you agree then that it had to be from a screen up position? It was down and you turned it over to throw it out, does it come on?
Of course not. It can through the air.
So the phone was down the car. And here it has to turn over, right?
At least one time, yes, sir.
And do you disagree with the previous testimony demonstrating that when you take the phone and turn it over, the screen comes on?
No, the screen does come on.
If you rotate it on that axis so that it's screen down to screen up, does the screen come on?
Pick it up again, and the screen comes on. Pick it up, it does not.
If you rotate it, does the screen come on?
Only again, if you
In your office? So you record what you're doing, and you did not enter any data. Is this because you were afraid that you had to disclose that data if you recorded it?
Of course not.
Experiment or video record anything?
It never crossed my mind.
Do you believe that you would have to have disclosed that data if you had recorded it?
No, sir. That's correct.
record any data.
Did not cross my mind to video experiments. I just did the experiments to determine whether or not
And you
the screen
didn't, you occur to you to how fast you're removing the phone, maybe to even find out what is that threshold claim where the phone goes from turning on to not turning on. Exactly when does that happen? No, do you?
No, sir. It would take me much longer to turn these. Why it's not.
Or did you look at any documentation regarding the raised awake feature on the iPhone?
I extensively. I reached out to several different forensic groups that I'm a part of, and we were not able to find any white papers on that.
You were unable to get any actual data on it, so you resorted to throwing your phone around alone? Was anyone with you when you did this?
No, sir. I was alone in my office.
So you're alone in your office, throwing the phone around, taking no measurements, recording nothing over the weekend, and then you come in here and testify as an expert as to what the phone will do, and test that it's what we've seen it do right here in this courtroom.
That's correct.
Have you ever done this, anything like this before? You'd mentioned testifying 6 times before. Was this your expert testimony in any other case?
My expert testimony in other cases was always about cell phone ports and the data contained therein. I've never actually done physical experimentation to come up with a realistic result.
So your previous experience was extracting data from census?
Correct.
Is that what you're trained to do?
Yes, sir.
The training that was listed, it was to extract data from a cell phone?
Yes, sir.
Are you an engineer?
No, sir.
Do you have any certification in engineering?
No, sir.
Do you have any degree, academic qualifications in engineering? Have you ever worked as an engineer?
No, sir.
You're trained in extracting data from the cell phone.
That's correct.
And when it comes to tossing it around and seeing how it moves, you don't know anything more than anyone else, do you?
No, sir.
So you had this. Your Honor, based on the previous answer, I would move to strike expert opinion.
On what basis?
The witness just has no expertise in this. He just said he has no more knowledge about anything else, that his expertise is in extracting data from the cell phone, and that this opinion is therefore outside of his expertise, and this is inadmissible in testimony.
Previously stipulated that he was an expert.
Yes, Your Honor, in extracting data from the cell phone, which was before we got to the testimony about
Says
this.
the state.
This witness performed a series of tests. He's reporting on. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You know that he's testified to that.
And he's expressed his opinion of what the phone will do in those series of tests. It's not a good thing, but I think his opinion of when the screen would light up is something he tested and something he can testify about.
Anything further?
Your Honor, simply that when it was proffered for testimony, it was in extracting data from the cell phone, not in engineering, electrical engineering, which is where he's gone now.
Objections old.
So you just testified you have no more knowledge about hearing the iPhone than anyone here, correct?
I know more about how the iPhone works, but I'm an engineer.
Not an engineer. When you said that the accelerometers are what trigger this feature, how do you know that?
That's from data that's on Apple's website.
So you found the wake that says that the accelerometers are what trigger this feature?
No, sir. That's the only thing that is capable of detecting motion on the phone, besides GPS.
And you have no idea how much motion is required because you didn't measure, correct?
No, sir. I don't know the threshold.
Okay. You, this weekend, sat around your office by yourself, recording nothing, putting the phone here, and are now reporting those results as an expert in what?
Cell phone forensics. I understand how cell phones operate most.
You understand electrical engineering? Do you have any background in that?
I'm not an engineer, no, sir.
Do you know how the accelerometers in the iPhone? Can you tell us?
Not a, no. But I know that they exist, and I know that's how the iPhone determines motion.
So there's an unknown device within the phone that detects motion in a way that you don't understand, and some amount of motion that you don't know how much because you didn't measure it does something that only you saw in your office this weekend. Is that correct?
Well, no, I know what that is. It's the accelerometer is what detects the motion, and that's what causes the iPhone to race to wake.
How does an accelerometer detect motion?
I'm not an engineer. I do not know how it detects motion. I just know that it does.
But, sir, you really haven't said anything you couldn't quickly find out on Google, isn't that?
Probably.
You have no expertise in this.
I have expertise in how cell phones work.
What do you mean by that, how cell phones work?
So I can tell you all about the knowledge C databases. I can tell you about the way iPhones are not iPhones. I can tell you the way some software is written, what kind of code it's written in. I can tell you how data is stored on the phone, the programming that's involved with the iOS feature, and the different databases that are involved.
Can you tell us that if somebody was driving down the road, picked up a phone, was either on the seat or pulled it out of a pocket or something like that, and while continuing to drive out the window, that the screen would not come on if it landed up?
I can tell you that it will not come on. I can tell you that it might not come on.
Because when you were alone, throwing your phone around, you think sometimes.
Objection is sustained.
When Mr. Barber was asked about picking up a phone, just a demonstratory with mental pickup.
That is correct.
That's a more or aggressive pickup, and then moving to a throwing motion.
Yes, sir. I just picked it up and threw it.
All right. And based off of what you observed, the screen doesn't come on most of the time.
When I like a piece most time, we throw it end over end, and more than half will not come.
All right. And Mr. Barber asked you several times whether you knew more than anybody else about these cell phones, correct?
Correct.
And in particular, in this instance, you do know more than most people because you perform tests, correct? You perform multiple tests.
Correct.
Objection sustained.
What did you do this weekend?
This weekend, I performed multiple tests on a device matching the same make and model as Maggie Murdaugh's to determine whether or not the race to wake feature would always enable the screen to come on whenever the phone is thrown.
And Mr. Barber asked you several times about being an engineer, correct? And you hear out of Mr. he was an engineer. And do you testified you don't know exactly how the accelerometer works, correct?
That is correct.
Is that knowledge necessary to observe when the screen turns on and when it turns on?
Sir.
Not further, sir.
Further.
How many times do you for your results to be statistically reliable?
I'm sorry, again?
How many times do you need to experiment for your results to be statistically
More than 10? Sometimes it turns on, sometimes it doesn't.
Do you know how reliability statistics?
I took you have to have a performance, you have to have a default that has no change to it, to have your same form of change. Take the data, you put it into a formula, it gives you a degree of reliability.
Did you do that here?
No, sir.
Further questions?
Sit down. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, State Call Mark Ball.
affirm that any testimony today will be the truth, the whole truth, and the truth, so help you God.
Mark, last name.
Case. The question I'd ask you is, prior to the murders of Ronnie and Paul, did you ever hear express any distrust of SLED? You tell the jury what observations were of the community.
It was very good. He interacted with his solicitor.
To find out that Ellicott installed lights in the private vehicle,
Yes.
and can you tell the jury roughly how long ago that was?
I can't tell you precisely. I can tell you the vehicle and seized. He got a vehicle in the end of December before the murders occurred in June. So he had the vehicle 6 rough, and it was on the vehicles prior to that, and it was urban as well. They were actually installed sometime.
Yes. Do you have
A bunch of them.
and when you're around looking for hogs, can you do that in the daytime?
Yes.
And is it not uncommon to see hogs during the daytime?
I shot weeks ago. I shot 5
During the
before. They come out, different times. The more pressure you put on them, the more nocturnal they become, but all the time. They root, and that's the real problem is. Up your road, anything else.
you know,
Here,
the defendant and family had long guns, rifles, and shotguns. Paul's weapon when shooting
shoot.
hogs.
300 blackouts were bought for hog hunting. I assume Paul would shoot with anything he had, but that's what the 300 blackouts were.
Did you have any conversations with the defendant with purchasing blackouts?
Not from anywhere. Yeah, we put them together. It was a game warden.
After did you have conversations about his activities that night?
I had in him.
Some sort of
those lightning strikes in life that just jolts you and you don't know rhyme or reason.
what, if anything, did he say about why he Maggie involved?
As I testified, my recollection was listening. I was listening to what occurred. Who did this? Why would they have done this? But the second time, where all and then to Maggie, and like I said, I don't know whether that slipped one to the other person, but he checked on one.
You've heard his admission now that he did go to the kennels around 8:40
Thursday. Yeah.
Be clear that he did conversation with you.
Or thing about that, or any there.
For how long?
34 years.
How was he able to look behind like convincingly and effortlessly?
Objection.
Pretty obvious. I didn't know the stealing. I didn't know any of that. And, it's not the way a plaintiff's practice work. You work on your own unless you're working with someone else. And a lot of things I was told, a lot of things just weren't there. I mean, all sorts of things. They weren't truthful. Good afternoon.
Here, after the Labor weekend, when Alex was confronted by the law firm,
It was before Labor.
yeah,
It was
Friday or Thursday
Right.
before.
the fight before. To him on that Monday when I believe he and Randy and were going to, I believe,
Okay.
to the place down there, and I got a phone call, whatever it was. I was coming from the office. I'd been digging through his files and stuff. I got a call. It registered as John Marr. I picked it up and said, "What day, John?" It was Al.
Labor Day 2021.
Labor Day 2021.
Since Labor Day 20, spoken with Alex.
I did not.
And since Labor Day 2021, Alex is either after jail as well. Wouldn't have any expectation that since September of 2021 he would come to you, talk to you about whether he was on a video, whether it was at the kennels, or that's correct. You asked questions about distrust of SLED, and you testified that he had a good relationship with law enforcement.
He did. I never heard distrust of somebody else.
Alex gave the position that some was wrongfully charged for felony boating under the influence, causing death and serious bodily injuries, or the boating accident.
Yes, he, I mean, case, but I don't know that it was directed at law enforcement. Just wasn't. He didn't specifically say or didn't say I fled or I distrust Beaufort County Sheriff's Department or DNR or whoever. It was just he thought that there was defensible. It was a defensible case.
I believe that in the spring of 2021 that was actually investigating for obstructing the burning accident investigation. Right?
No, sir.
You're not aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Alan was aware of that.
I had no idea what it was. He never said that to me. I didn't know about any of the investigation. The grand jury, when I was grand jury.
Were you aware that he has sat in a criminal prosecution of his good friend?
I knew they. I didn't know much about the details. Slept in after the 3rd of September.
And Chief Alexander was prosecuted after that investigated him, correct?
I think that's the case, yes.
And that Chief Alexander was wrongfully accused. You heard that?
I don't know what they thought about it. I know that they were Alexander, and Alexander ultimately got off on a jury.
Now we do know Alvin County Sheriff's case recused themselves because Alec was.
Let me correct something. I said that he got off. He was guilty. Implication as well.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And Sheriff, but the entire Collin County Sheriff's Department recused them in this case because of Alec's close relationship with the Collin County Sheriff's Department and law enforcement. Is that right?
I know they recused themselves. They called in that night. I wasn't privy to the reason. I make an assumption.
And there are different levels of law enforcement agencies. There's, say, the Town of Hampton Police Department, Hampton Sheriff's Department, and Alec had a really good relationship at that level with those folks.
Right, he did.
And he had a really good relationship with the Collin Sheriff's Department.
He did, as far as I
but so you mentioned that hogs become nocturnal when there's a lot of pressure on them.
They can.
They can.
It depends on a lot of things. Like right now, it's up.
Right.
Then times are dry. They go out into the flat swamp and root up everything out there.
And the pressure that you were to is hunt pressure.
Yeah.
And are you aware that Paul put a lot of pressure on the hogs at Moselle?
I knew Paul hunted hogs a lot of places. Paul dog and would hunt people's property, came to my counties. But how much pressure I don't know because I wouldn't. I mean, I'd ridden around the property several times. I know it wasn't about hog hunting.
Sure. And I want to ask you about the property track. So, we've all seen the drone photos of the house in the Knolls and Moselle Road sort of right in front of the fair. And then if you're looking at the drone, and we've seen some Dove Field, right, adjacent. Is that south, I would think?
Yeah, at least east.
And then the Moselle, I think they're
Well, there's a swamp.
the,
Big salt cat.
the begins behind the house and goes. Is that west?
South.
The swamp is behind the house.
Behind the house.
Okay. And across the street from the house, duck pond and shooting range and no swamp.
Correct. Land.
And all the houses behind the house.
All over. They follow. There's a water they follow. They or whatnot, but they can be anywhere. There's gum every place else, and they just trample where they want to go. But I there, wooded,
Right.
and
And in the month of June, warm, is it not?
it usually is here in South Carolina.
It is, and
Not, I haven't noticed that, and I've killed probably well over 1,000 hogs. And so we trap them all the way through. I mean, I've got 2 traps, and well, actually, I got 6 traps. But I mean, I trap them, I shoot them. They're just a scourge. They eat everything. They root up your roads. Then they get in your pine trees when they're little. They'll root them up. They're a teetotal nuisance. I carry a gun with me most of the time.
do you have a gun with a thermal scope so you can hunt them at night?
I do thermal. I have others.
Yeah, Mr. Small, is there ever a time when you don't have a gun with you when you're traveling around?
Only if I forget it.
Right, that's what I thought.
Usually I have one.
And you understood that Maggie and Al got 300 black owls from Buster for Christmas one year, and they came with thermal scopes.
I do.
And are you aware that Paul had his Buster stolen?
I was.
That
I did. I know. Black one taken from.
right. That's
Used in the daytime. And you could suppose that serve my purpose.
emotional trials. He's an emotional, isn't he? For example, I do. Emotional then. You remember him speaking at the trial after he had finished up his term, and he got emotional then.
Well, I remember that.
Do you recall reading or learning on the morning of the statement was about the county sheriff's office that said at this time
Yes.
Concern you?
Very much.
And why did,
I 3, 4 o'clock, came home, laid down, took a shower, and then I heard that. Got on with Sheriff Smalls, my way into work about 7:30 or so, and I asked if he knew anything about that was up. I guess I had questions because of people that work for us. The last thing I wanted was somebody coming.
You were asked a little bit about the department recusing themselves. Are they need to assist on the case?
I know they were out there, and I would internal politics of who's lead, who's not lead. I mean, I know they were there. One of the deputies called the next morning and asked me where Paul's truck was, and I called Alec and verified where it was, and told, I had several interactions with them. So yeah, they were still involved. They weren't.
And for the first few months of the investigation, the local solicitor's office was still running the investigation, to your knowledge?
As far as I know, they were out there. Mr. Stone, his assistant were out there, investigator were out there the next day, and I want to say they were out there maybe 2 days, but to lend whatever assistance they could lend, I guess.
And that'd be the same.
And I think it was August. Like everybody in the paper that Mr. Stone had recused himself.
And that'd be the same office for which the defendant had a badge.
He was an assistant. That's the way it normally works.
And we're going to break, excuse the jury now, till 3:15. So everyone be seated. Witnesses do you have, Mr. Walker?
I believe just one year at lunchtime, more that might, I believe just one year. That would be
I received an email that want to have council look at. Let's see. Trying to figure who worked. On the other side of the bunch.
Briefly, I know that there had been a request by the defense for a jury view, and for planning purposes, I don't know if Your Honor, we have some time for that, to do that, I guess, or at what point?
Yes, after the state rest.
All right.
Well, depending on what time it might be this afternoon.
Just
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Counsel motion regarding the cell phone testimony. Your Honor, previous action was that
That wasn't your objection.
now making a motion under counsel, Your Honor, for the record. Counsel, the Supreme Court said that when admitting scientific evidence, the trial judge must find the evidence will assist the trial judge, the expert witness is qualified, and the underlying is reliable. The trial judge should apply Jones factors to determine reliability, and then the case gives the Jones factors as considering the admissibility of scientific evidence. With the Jones standard, the court looks at several factors, including one, publications and peer review of the
What the rule says, beyond that.
the testimony was no publication, peer review was described.
Is late. You stipulate agree that he was not. I gave you an opportunity to question him.
Your Honor, we had no notice that he was going to offer the experiment. He was offered as a cell phone forensic expert, which he is. And there was no notice that he had done this engineering analysis throwing his phone around.
He did not do an engineering analysis. He said he didn't do an engineering analysis. And what was scientific about his testimony?
Well, yes, Your Honor, his testimony was not scientific. That's why moving under counsel that it is not viable scientific testimony. It should be struck.
As Your Honor's pointed out, there was no objection. This was that there's a practical experience that is for opinions to be offered, and that's kind of what we're talking about. The raised away feature and the manner in which it works and in which it doesn't work, and he offered his testimony based on his experiments in that regard. Counsel was allowed to fully cross-examine the witness, and ultimately do weight and admissibility.
Objections are no record. He did not provide scientific testimony. He conducted an experiment and told the jury about it. The fact that the defense had any questions concerning his qualification to testify as an expert witness. The defense had an opportunity to do that through voir dire or otherwise. Rule 5 does not apply to reply testimony in the sense that the stage is not required to provide any report or anything. Your objection is noted for the record. The testimony speaks for itself, and that's that. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, one other matter. Pathologist said this morning concerning some of her testimony about the white material that was noted. She indicated that she had never put that in her autopsy report. She had never given this opinion before. We propose rebuttal to bring our patches back to testify when they finish their case.
I'm not inclined to allow any rebuttal based on what I've heard at this point.
Even though she said wasn't in a report.
Yes, sir.
Revealed it today for the first time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you're denying that request?
Yes, I'm not inclined to at this time.
Well, when would be the appropriate time?
When it's time for you to offer it, and I'll hear it fully, but I'm telling you now, allowing any based on what I've heard at this point.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else? Recess to 15.